Britain's borders are not confined to the British Isles. The British government still holds power over 14 overseas territories scattered across the globe, from Gibraltar at the entrance of the Mediterranean to the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic. These remnants are the last vestiges of Britain's once mighty empire. At its peak, just over a century ago, the British Empire covered 1/4 of the world's landmass and governed nearly a third of its population. It was famously known as the empire on which the sun never set. But how did such a small island nation come to rule the largest and most powerful empire in history? This is the story of the British Empire. The foundations of the British Empire were laid long before the formal creation of Britain itself. For much of history, England was the dominant power in the British Isles, gradually bringing Wales and parts of Ireland under its control. Scotland, however, remained an independent kingdom, resisting repeated English invasions. By the early 17th century, Queen Elizabeth I had commissioned English adventurers such as Sir Francis Drake and Sir Martin Frobisher to explore and claim new lands. The first English colony in North America, established at Roanoke Island in 1585, ended in mystery when its settlers disappeared without a trace. Despite this failure, Elizabeth granted royal charters to trading companies like the Levant Company in 1592 and the East India Company in 1600, laying the groundwork for future colonial expansion. When Elizabeth died in 1603, James VI of Scotland inherited the English throne, uniting the two crowns. He continued colonial expansion, leading to the establishment of different types of colonies. Crown colonies were directly ruled by the monarchy through a governor. Charter colonies were governed under corporate charters, allowing settlers more autonomy. Proprietary colonies were managed by individuals or companies for profit, often transitioning to crown rule over time. Meanwhile, in Ireland, James initiated the plantation of Ulster, which saw Protestant settlers from England and Scotland take over lands in the north. This model of organised colonisation would later influence British expansion elsewhere. Throughout the 1600s, England expanded its colonies in North America and the Caribbean, sometimes establishing new settlements, other times seizing them from rival powers. New York, for example, was captured from the Dutch in 1665. In Africa and the East Indies, England established trading posts and fortified settlements with the Royal African Company, founded in 1660, becoming a major player in the transatlantic slave trade. Scotland, eager to establish its own colonies, saw most of its efforts end in failure. The most disastrous was the Darien Scheme of 1698, an attempt to create a colony in Panama. The scheme collapsed due to disease, starvation and Spanish resistance, leading to financial ruin in Scotland. The resulting economic crisis made union with England more attractive, culminating in the Acts of Union in 1707, which merged England and Scotland into the Kingdom of Great Britain. In the 18th century, Britain engaged in wars with European rivals, securing territorial gains through treaties. Victories in the War of the Spanish Succession in 1714, the 7 Years' War in 1763, and others granted Britain control over vast regions, including Canada, Florida, the Caribbean and India. However, the empire faced setbacks. Britain's American colonies revolted over taxation without representation, leading to the American Revolution, which spanned from 1775 to 1783. The loss of the 13 colonies was a major blow, prompting Britain to shift its focus towards Asia and the Pacific. Captain James Cook mapped and claimed New Zealand and Australia, which later became penal colonies. The British East India Company expanded its influence in India, culminating in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, which established British dominance in Bengal. The Napoleonic Wars, spanning from 1803 to 1815, cemented Britain's global dominance. The Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 eliminated the French and Spanish naval threat, ensuring Britain's control of the seas. After Napoleon's defeat, Britain gained additional colonies, including Malta, Mauritius, and the Cape Colony in South Africa. During this period, Britain also expanded in Asia. The Opium Wars, from 1839 to 1842, against China led to British control of Hong Kong, while further conquests expanded British India. However, in 1857, the Indian Rebellion, also known as the Sepoy Mutiny, challenged British rule. In response, the British government dissolved the East India Company and took direct control of India in 1858, making it the jewel in the crown of the empire. Meanwhile, in Africa, Britain competed with other European powers in the scramble for Africa. It gained control over Egypt in 1882, securing the vital Suez Canal. Further expansion continued in southern and eastern Africa, culminating in the Boer Wars, which spanned from 1880 to 1902, bringing the Boer republics under British control. By 1914, the British Empire was at its territorial peak. However, World War I, from 1914 to 1918, drained its resources despite support from colonies like Canada, Australia, and India. Though Britain emerged victorious, the war accelerated nationalist movements in its colonies. World War II, spanning from 1939 to 1945, further weakened Britain, leaving it economically exhausted. After the war, independence movements gained momentum. India and Pakistan became independent in 1947, followed by other colonies in Africa, the Caribbean and Asia throughout the mid-20th century. By the 1970s, most of the British Empire had dissolved, replaced by the Commonwealth of Nations, a voluntary association of former colonies. The symbolic final act came in 1997, when Britain handed over Hong Kong to China. Although the British Empire no longer exists, its influence is still felt today. The English language is the most widely spoken globally, and British cultural, political and legal systems have shaped many nations. Modern Britain itself is a testament to the Empire's legacy, with diverse communities representing former colonies now residing in the very country that once ruled over them. While the Empire's history is marked by both achievements and atrocities, its impact on the modern world remains undeniable.